Newsfirst, face to face with Charlene Benedict.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Face to Face. Sri Lanka is at a crossroads right now. Next year, the general public of Sri Lanka will be given, hopefully, an opportunity to choose which direction Sri Lanka should take for the future. Sri Lankans were given this option on multiple times before, and it turns out that we always squandered these opportunities, which resulted in the situation or the plight that Sri Lankans are facing today. To discuss these matters and much more, of course, we've got with us today parliamentarian from the National People's Power Movement, Dr. Harini Amarasuriya. A very good evening, Doctor, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Dr. Harini, now the NPP is being fielded or put forward as this brand new force of leaders who are against corruption, who are against everything that is bad and evil in Sri Lanka. And of course, one cannot deny that the following of the NPP, or the number of people who have started to believe in your policies, whatever they may be, has taken a certain uptick. But Dr. Harini, there are still those who don't really know where the NPP stands, because taking a look at the history of how the NPP was formed, initially it was the JVP, members of an armed struggle, due to certain political reasons, of course, including the suspension of that very political party. Then fast forward 30 years ahead, they were in government with former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, during which time they had about 16 seats in parliament. Fast forward a couple of years down the line, the JVP was down to 6 members in parliament, and finally now 3. So, speaking specifically on where the NPP stands on this spectrum of policies that Sri Lankans are now being asked to decide, where do you want to stand? Where does the NPP stand?
Well, I think the policies that we have presented are based on a clear analysis of the current situation in the country and how best to resolve it, right? So that's our main aim, that the problems facing the country today in the political sphere, in the economic sphere, how do we address those? So what is our vision about what a society or a government run by the NPP, what would that society look like, right? And for us, it's a democratic society. It's a society in which people participate in decision making, where there's engaged citizenship and that there's space for that. There's equity. There's respect for all, and there's a government that actually represents the people and serves the people, and there's a state sector that's efficient and strong and service oriented, and there's a private sector that's ethical, and a private sector that understands its social responsibility and partners with the people and with the government in taking this country forward, right? So I think we resist being put into any sort of box and said you are this, right? Because I think the situation in the country demands that we don't look for solutions from within a box, right? And also because the kind of categories that we worked with for so long have become so meaningless in this current situation, where nobody seems to really know what any of those categories mean anymore. For us, it's a much more pragmatic approach at looking at what works for this country, looking at how we got to where we are historically, and addressing those concerns. So our platform, as you know, is very much anti-corruption, pro-democracy, and social justice. So I think that's the basis on which we have formulated most of our policies. So we want to see a society where everyone is able to participate economically, politically, socially. No one is marginalized, no one is excluded, and one where human potential can be developed as freely as possible, right? That's the kind of society that we envisage. You put a label on it. We don't want to.
Doctor, looking at what really the views of the general public when we do go out and speak with people, there is this age-old saying that says, the known devil is better than an unknown angel.
Yes.
So I think it's quite right to say that the NPP, I might stand, is the unknown angel.
Unknown angel.
Is the unknown angel. But as the saying goes, Dr. Harini, the known devil is better than the unknown angel. To some people in the general public, when they look at one political camp, they know how they are going to steal. They know how they which areas would they use. Would it be selling of national assets, or would it be tender fraud, whatnot. When they look at the other political campaign, they would know that this is how they are going to be corrupt. This is how they are going to promote their political allies and their business friends, so on and so forth. But they don't really know how the JVP is going to function in that sense. For the simple reason that the JVP has not yet been in power. And unfortunately, and coincidentally also, that's kind of the slogan that a lot of current mainstream politicians from other political parties attempt to capture the general public on, saying, you know us. We've done a lot of bad things, but it's not as bad as what they are going to do if they come to power. How do you respond to that?
No, I think it's a fair point that you're making, in that one of the problems that people have with us is that they don't know what a government, an NPP-led government, will look like.
Because the most number of JVP, NPP, closely knitted parliamentarians that have been in parliament is about 16.
No, 39.
39, all right.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah. 39, right? And there were 4 ministers at one stage. For 1 year, there were 4 ministers. But so it's not that unknown, right?
But it's still relatively unknown given the 70 plus years of
50
independence.
Plus. Yeah, well, but the party has only been in, the JVP has been in existence for 50 odd years.
And for 1 year, you've had 4 ministers.
Yes, and the NPP is only for 4 years. We formed it.
So we come back to the conclusion that people don't really know what the government
but we are a new party,
like.
right? So I think the people have to make a choice, and they are making a choice, right? I think there's a real movement now that is a rejection of the past, a rejection of the establishment, a desire for a different look, a different feel. Right? People don't want to go back to the status quo. I mean, that's the resistance that you see to the current government also, right? Because it's the same old, and they've seen this over and over again, right? So there's a real desire for something new, and I think that's where we come along, right? We are not tainted by the evils that are besetting those who have been in power, right? And that is who we are, right? So I think people have to take us as that, right? And the opposition, the parties who are opposed to us, do 2 things. One is to say they are as bad as us, right?
They meaning you.
Us, right? That
you are as bad as them.
That's one effort they make. The NPP, see, they are also just like us. That's one thing they try to say, that the NPP is no different. Because the fact that we are different is what is hurting them the most. And the second thing is, as you said, to say they don't, we don't know what they are, they'll be worse than us, right? And here they kind of also point to Gotabaya Rajapaksa and say, look what happened there.
Trying to use that to their advantage.
Trying to use that to an advantage. But the response we have here is that we are not a party that is based on an individual. We are not a party that is centered around a personality of a leader, right? We are much more of a collective force, where whether it's how we discuss and come up with our policies, how we implement our policies, how we take decisions as a political movement. This is very, very collective, right? So we take collective responsibility for what we do, right? And I think that's our strength. because we bring in so many people into our decision making process, and our decision making process is transparent and very democratic, right? So no one person can determine that this is how it's going to be. That is our strength, right? And also the strength, our strength lies in the ethics we follow as a party, right? The rules that we are all bound by, whether it's the general secretary of the party or the newest member of the party or the newest person to collaborate with us. We all have to abide by the same code of conduct, right, with regard to our behavior, our practice, right, how we engage with the public, how we present ourselves to the public, right? So we are bound by that code of conduct, and that's pretty strong in our group because, like I said, we are very much a collective group who take responsibility for each other also and for each other's actions, right? So all I can say is judge us by what we do, right? How we behave, whether in parliament or outside parliament, right? You talked about the kind of patronage politics of the other parties, right? Look at us and see, how we function as a party, right? How the positions in our party are allocated, or how the decision making process takes place, right? So judge us by our practice, not by what obviously our opponents are going to say in order to score points against us. I mean, don't take their word. Talk to us and judge us by our practice.
Now, Dr. Harini, this is only the second show of Face to Face, and yesterday when I was speaking with Professor Charitha Herath, he cautioned the general public about hating all politicians and saying that we need a brand new group. Now, the NPP is looking to establish a government. The NPP is looking to bring about or to appoint the first president from the NPP. That is the goal, is it not?
Our goal is to form a government, and if the presidential election has to come first, so we will certainly be hoping that our candidate wins the presidential election as well.
So, Dr. Harini, for that to happen, it would require a substantial number of current parliamentarians, or let's say those who are in the political game at the moment, to be removed, and for brand new people, brand new blood, brand new politicians, to a certain sense, being in a position of authority. They might have been engaged in politics for a long time, but this is the first time that they are going to get authority to do what they can do for the people, of course. So this kind of contradicts with what Professor Charitha Herath said yesterday. So how does that quite go along? Can we expect something good for the nation by throwing out a majority of the politicians who are currently in power, who know how things work, who know what to do, where to do, when to do, the back doors on how to get things done? Would that really work?
See, I think that is precisely the problem, Shalan, the way how things were done, right? And we need to change that. We have to change those backdoor negotiations and that old way of doing things, right? So that is precisely the point, right? So an NPP government will not be continuing in the same way, will not be doing things the way that it was done in the past, right? Our intention is to run this country differently, right? So for instance, to give you an example, say when we appoint ministers, we will appoint for each ministry also like an advisory council, right? Who will be advising the minister on the decisions that he or she has to make, so that he or she is not unilaterally just able to go off on a limb and take whatever decisions he wants. So that that process of accountability will always be ensured, right? This is why we are also, even now, what we are doing is strengthening people's participation in the decision making process, because for us one of the strongest safeguards against corruption, but also to ensure good governance, is to make sure that citizens are are able to participate in the decision-making process. So we have been, for the past 2 years, talking to people at the ground level, forming people into groups, giving them the kind of education on citizen engagement, right? So that they are much more empowered then to hold their representatives accountable, right? And this is something we want to guarantee through a constitutional change as well, where you have this to some extent in the US, where even local government decisions have to be publicly discussed with the community. Community get a say in
like town hall debates.
Like town hall debates. Local communities get to observe how their councils are run. Their budgets are transparent. They can question what happens, right? So we want to build in those kinds of systems so that your elected representative is far more accountable to their constituency, right? We want to introduce things like the right to recall. Right, so that where a group of constituents feel that their elected representative is not delivering, they are able to follow a certain process whereby they can recall that person and call for a fresh election, right? So you have to build in systems, right? Build in processes whereby your elected representative is held accountable, right? And to do that, you need also a very different kind of relationship with the citizen, between your elected representative and the citizen, right? So what we are actually hoping for is a new kind of social contract, right, where the conversation and the relationship is entirely different. Your leaders are not some sort of privileged group that's kind of above, on another plane, right? We want to bring that down. Right, we want to make that relationship much more engaged and much more equal, right? So we will not be doing things the way it has been done in the past, and that's precisely why we need new people who are willing to function in that way and be held accountable and be open to that kind of system of governance.
Dr. Harini, do you think that politicians who are currently in the system, or these political individuals, of course, that you criticize, so are capable of changing their ways? Do you think they can change?
I think it's like this. I don't want to discount the possibility that anyone is not able to redeem themselves.
Okay.
Right? I mean, come on. Okay. However, people who have benefited illegally from this system will find it very difficult to give that up, right? And Shalan, I want to say this. I mean, this is something I've been thinking about quite seriously ever since I got into sort of active full-time politics, is the allure of power. Right? How power can be a very seductive force, right? And that doesn't lie just in your potential for corruption. It's not only that. It's not only the kickbacks and the corruption per se. It's that aura of power and what that does to you. What happens when you walk into a room and you have people treating you in a different way, where you never have to walk into a shop like anyone else or get on public transport or walk on the streets normally, or just walk on your own without an entourage of people surrounding you, right? That takes you away from reality and elevates you into another sort of realm, and people get addicted to that, right? So that is why it is so important to have systems in place that keep you grounded, right? That doesn't let power seduce you to that level, right? And I think what makes it difficult for people in power currently to change is because that is the political system, the culture that has sustained them for so long, right? So when for the first time in 2022, when people just rose up and rejected that kind of political behavior and that political culture, they just couldn't take it, right? Because that's the only way they knew or know how to be in power.
They actually withdrew from all of their functions and they just stopped.
They stopped. And also there's a element of real anger against people who challenge that way of behavior, right? So I think that is what is making it really difficult for those in power to let go, right? And that's why you need a discipline within a party and an ethical code within a party to make sure that, you know, that element of corruption doesn't become normalized.
Dr. Harini, we're in the final few minutes of the show now. There is a tendency among the general public also to be taken away by this aura of power that you spoke about. People look at these leaders and they say, oh my gosh, look at the way they walk, look at the way they carry themselves, look at the poise. And there are those who vote for that poise, for that aura. And it's, of course, like you said, difficult for these individuals to change. Likewise, it's difficult for the general public to change. There are those who I know who would go to the polling booth saying, I'm going to vote for, you know, against corruption, but still vote for the same person that he voted the last time, just out of habit. So do you think that Sri Lanka is ready for the kind of change that you are proposing?
Absolutely. I have every confidence that Sri Lanka is not just ready, but is going to make that change. Because I think you can't discount the changes that have happened in the last two odd years in our country. I mean, and politicians and political parties who do not recognize that change, they are going to be the losers, right?
The biggest losers.
The biggest losers, right? That because today the citizens of this country are far ahead of their politicians, and politicians have to catch up. And it is those who will catch up and who will march alongside those citizens who have now changed and who are demanding change, who will be winning the elections next year.
One final question, Dr. Harini Amarasuriya. By the looks of it, you too may be in the running for candidacy of the presidency from the NPP. Are you ready, Doctor?
You are flogging a dead horse here, Shalan. We have declared who our candidate is, and that is Anurakkumara Dissanayake. And he is our candidate, and that is it. There is no doubt about it. He is the leader of our party. And I just want to say this. Think about this. 2.5 years ago, Shalan, if you were interviewing me, you would never ask me about what it would be like to be in power, right? Because we were the 3% party. We have got to a point today where now our opponents are running scared and trying to tarnish us at every point because they recognize us as the threat now, that we are potentially the next, forming the next government, right?
I think the most common argument is the fact that the economic crisis is a result of the JVP burning down buses in the 70s.
Yes, as opposed to the massive amounts of corruption that have taken place since 88.
Quite a sound argument.
Since 88, a very sound argument, yes, indeed. But so we wouldn't be having this conversation if not for the change that has taken place. And as a leader, Anura has been a real part of that change. He's the person who got us to this position, right? I mean, he has a huge role. He played a huge role in getting us to this. So he well deserves and is fully qualified to be our presidential candidate.
One final question, Dr. Amarasuriya, if you don't mind. We've seen countless governments give massive promises, come into power, completely default on all of those promises, and then probably be turned over or toppled by another political party, and then again come back into power 5 years after that. Any assurances on this same thing will not happen to the JVP, and the JVP would not be just another cog in this deadly wheel?
Yeah, because we won't be running that same wheel, right? It is a different wheel that we will be setting in place. So, I mean, that's the only thing I can say. I fully understand why all these questions are being asked of us, because we are looking at it from this current system. But that is not what we will be, right? So, yeah, we hope that's we want to break that cycle, right? We want to break that cycle and have a kind of country where, you know, it's being in politics and being a politician becomes something that is the aspiration of some of the best people in this country.
So much like Daenerys Targaryen in the Game of Thrones, you want to break the wheel. Thank you very much, Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, for joining us on our program today. And of course, the general public of Sri Lanka are expecting change, but to bring about that change, the general public should first be willing to change themselves. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.
News First, face to face with Shalan Benedict.
Devalaman paunave vele mata nuvele ay inni ting ting
ඔනේ කරුමයක් දැකෝ මේක
e mende father
අභිමන්ගේ අතුරුදහන් වීමට මාව සම්බන්ධයක් නැහැ මං ගැන කිසිම සැකයක් නැහැ කියලා කිව්වේ අංකල්ම නේද මේ කතාව මොකක්ද
ඕක කොහෙද අනේ අහිංසක ඌ තමයි මේ ෆීල්ඩ් එකේ ඉන්න කට්ට කෛරාටික වෙට්ට පිත්තල අංකුරා දැන් ඉතින් ඔයාටත් දෙයියන්ගෙන් පිටයි ඈ
නීල පබලු අද රාත්‍රී 9ට සිරස ටෙලිතිරයෙන්
මේ ඔනේ යාටලා ඉතින් අර ඉස්කෝතු දෙක මැද්දට ඉරටු කෑලා ගාලා ඒක උස්සලා ගාලා පුරුදුලා වරේ මා උස්සන්න
දැන් ඔය හැමෙන් ඔය චල්තල් කේස් වල කොළඹ නතර වෙන්නේ ඕකේ පොට්ට කහණී ෆගෙන්ද පොලිසියෙන් ඒ පස්සේ පන්නන්නෙත් නෑ අනිවාර්යෙන් වස්තු එතනක්
ඒ පනිස් වලට ඒ කෙසෙල් ගෙඩි කියලා ගන්න මගේ කෙම්ම ගන්න. එයා ඔයා කවුද කියලා හුවොත් කියන්න වස්තුගේ බොඩිගාඩ් තැම්පත් බැන්ඩෝ කියලා.
ආදරේ තරම් අද රාත්‍රී 8:30
සිරස ටෙලිතිරයෙන්.
And as messy as a democracy can get, the values that a democracy can bring to its country people, to its citizens, it's so important.
Ceylon cinnamon is the best cinnamon in the world, and we have also produced our own data to prove that.
We believe that timely elections are important to any democracy.
Atrocities, violence, corruption. So there is a culture of politics that in Sri Lanka that we are faced with. And so therefore women hate entering politics.
The United States of America is going into election season just next year. Sadly, Sri Lanka hasn't seen elections for a while.
The People's Platform.
මේ බන්ධනය මීට වඩා පරිස්සම් කරගන්න.
මේ සැරේ මං ඔයා වගේ පෞල් ජීවිත විනාශ කරන කෙනෙක්ව කොහොමදවත් ලං කරගන්නේ.
දැන් තමයි පාටි එක පටන් ගන්නෙ. මගේ සතුට, මගේ විශ්වාසය, මගේ ආදරය, මට හැමදේම අපහු ඕනේ.
මං වාට පොලියත් එක්කම අපව දෙනවා. කසාදේ හැම චාරිත්‍රයක්ම සම්පූර්ණයි.
Thank you so much මගේ දුවගේ වෙඩින් එකට ආවට. මේක ඔයාට.
අද රාත්‍රී 9:30 සිරස ටෙලිතිරයෙන්.
වාහනේ බැලලා ගියාට අභිමන් රෙස්ටුරන්ට් එක ඇතුළට ගිහිල්ලා නැහැ.
ඔයා කොහොමද දැනගත්තේ?
ආදිත්‍යයට වෙච්ච ගොඩක්